December 16, 1944, Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Major General Troy Middleton stands in his command post, staring at a map that has become his nightmare. Red arrows pierce through his defensive lines like daggers. In the past 6 hours, 3 entire German panzer divisions have smashed through his 8th Corps positions. His field phones are ringing with desperate calls from battalion commanders reporting being overrun. The numbers tell a story of catastrophe. 22,000 American soldiers are surrounded in the town of Bastogne. Across the Ardennes, German forces have achieved local superiority of 3-1, sometimes 5-1. Middleton's artillery batteries are firing independently, each gun crew working in isolation, lobbing shells at targets of opportunity. It's chaos masquerading as defense. A young lieutenant bursts through the door with the latest casualty report. In the first day alone, the Germans have inflicted over 8,000 American casualties. Middleton knows the mathematics of warfare. At this rate of attrition, the entire Allied advance will collapse within a week. The road to Antwerp lies open. If the Germans reach that port, they'll cut off the British Second Army and the Canadian First Army from their supplies. The war in Europe could extend into 1946, perhaps 1947. What Middleton doesn't know, what no German general suspects, is that 700 miles away in a drafty office in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, an obscure mathematics professor has already solved the problem that will save his surrounded troops. The solution involves no new weapons, no secret technology, no additional men. Just numbers. Pure, elegant, devastating mathematics. The Germans are about to learn that American artillery doesn't need to be bigger. It just needs to be smarter. For 3 years, American artillery has been losing the mathematics war. The problem isn't courage or training. It's coordination. When a forward observer spots enemy troops, he radios coordinates to his artillery battery. The battery commander calculates firing solutions, angle, powder charge, fuse setting. His guns fire, but here's the fatal flaw. Each battery operates independently. Battery A fires at 800 hours. Battery B, 2 miles away, fires at 803. Battery C fires at 807. The enemy has time to scatter, take cover, regroup. Studies from the North African campaign show that independent artillery fire achieves only 12% effectiveness against mobile targets. The German Wehrmacht, by contrast, has perfected artillery coordination. At Kasserine Pass in February 1943, German artillery batteries fired in devastating synchronized salvos. American forces suffered 6,000 casualties in a single week. After-action reports described it as walking into a steel wall. The Germans could mass fire from multiple batteries onto a single target within seconds of each other, creating a killing zone with no escape. American artillery. Officers have tried to solve this. They've created elaborate firing tables. They've established rigid communication protocols. They've trained battery commanders to coordinate by radio. Nothing works. The fundamental problem is mathematical. Calculating firing solutions for multiple batteries, accounting for different positions, different elevations, different ammunition types, and synchronizing them to impact simultaneously requires solving dozens of differential equations in real time. The Army's Ordnance Department has concluded it's impossible. Their official position, documented in a September 1943 memorandum, simultaneous impact from dispersed batteries requires computational capacity beyond human capability. Recommend continued emphasis on individual battery excellence rather than multi-battery coordination. The consensus among artillery experts is clear. You cannot coordinate more than 2 batteries with any reliability. The mathematics simply cannot be done fast enough for battlefield conditions. By December 1944, this failure has a body count. American artillery effectiveness in Europe averages 18%. German artillery effectiveness averages 34%. Those 16 percentage points translate to thousands of American lives. In the Hürtgen Forest alone, the American forces suffered 33,000 casualties in 3 months, many from German artillery that could mass fires faster than American guns could respond. The stakes couldn't be higher. Artillery accounts for over 60% of battlefield casualties in World War II. Whoever controls the artillery mathematics controls the battlefield. His name is Lieutenant Colonel William Barber Tuttle, and nothing in his background suggests he should be solving the Army's most critical tactical problem. Tuttle isn't a West Point graduate. He isn't even a career officer. Before Pearl Harbor, he taught mathematics at the University of Oklahoma, specializing in differential equations and statistical analysis. His students remember him as quiet, methodical, slightly awkward in social situations. His idea of excitement was finding an elegant proof for a complex theorem. When the Army drafted him in 1942, they assigned him to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, the Army's field artillery school. His job, teaching basic mathematics to artillery officers, ballistic trajectories, range calculations, nothing glamorous. While other officers his age are leading men in combat, Tuttle is drawing parabolas on a chalkboard. But Tuttle has access to something most artillery officers don't: failure data. Every artillery mission in the European theater generates an after-action report. These reports flow back to Fort Sill for analysis. Tuttle reads them obsessively. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. March 1944. Tuttle is in his office, surrounded by stacks of after-action reports, when he notices a pattern. In missions where 2 batteries fired within 10 seconds of each other, enemy casualties increased by 47%. Not because more shells were fired, but because the enemy had no time to react between impacts. He starts calculating. If 2 batteries firing within 10 seconds increases effectiveness by 47%, what happens with 3 batteries? 4, 10. The mathematics is elegant and terrifying. The effectiveness doesn't increase linearly. It increases exponentially. 3 batteries firing simultaneously aren't 3 times as effective as 1 battery. They're 8 times as effective. The enemy can't scatter because they don't know where the next impact will occur. They can't take cover because the entire target area is being saturated simultaneously. Tuttle realizes something the artillery experts have missed. The problem isn't coordination, it's prediction. You don't need batteries to communicate with each other during firing. You need them to calculate identical solutions before firing. If every battery commander has the same data and uses the same mathematical method, they'll arrive at the same firing time independently. He starts developing what he calls the time-on-target system. It's mathematically simple, but operationally revolutionary. Instead of each battery calculating when to fire, they calculate when shells should impact. Then they work backwards, accounting for their specific position and ballistic trajectory to determine their individual firing time. His colleagues think he's wasting his time on theoretical nonsense. But Tuttle has done something no artillery expert has done. He's treated the problem as pure mathematics rather than military doctrine. June 1944, Fort Sill Artillery Range. Tuttle has spent 3 months developing his mathematical tables. They're crude, handwritten sheets showing firing time adjustments based on distance from target, elevation differences, and ammunition type. He needs to test them, but there's a problem. Army regulations strictly prohibit unauthorized artillery exercises. Live fire training requires approval from the artillery school commandant, written safety protocols, range clearance from 3 separate offices. The process takes weeks. Tuttle doesn't have weeks. Allied forces have just landed at Normandy. Men are dying while artillery fires independently, ineffectively. He approaches Captain James McNamara, a battery commander who's been at Fort Sill for 2 years training new artillery crews. McNamara is a combat veteran from North Africa, invalided home after taking shrapnel at Anzio. He's seen firsthand how German artillery coordination slaughters American troops. Tuttle explains his system. McNamara studies the mathematics for 10 minutes, then looks up. This is either brilliant or insane. Probably both. Will you test it? Tuttle asks. McNamara glances at the door. What you're asking is technically illegal. Unauthorized live fire. If something goes wrong, we're both court-martialed. If we do nothing, men die, Tuttle says quietly. June 23rd, 1944, 05:30 hours. McNamara has assembled 3 artillery batteries on the range under the guise of routine maintenance exercises. 36 guns, 108 men. None of them know what's about to happen. Tuttle distributes his handwritten tables. He designates a target, an abandoned truck 3,000 yards downrange. He gives each battery commander identical target coordinates and one instruction. Calculate time on target for 0600 hours. The battery commanders work through Tuttle's tables. They account for their different positions. They adjust for wind. They calculate backwards from impact time to firing time. Each battery arrives at a different firing time. Battery A will fire at 0559.47. Battery B at 0559.51. Battery C at 0559.54. At 0559.45, McNamara gives the order. The batteries fire in sequence, 13 seconds separating first shot from last. For 13 seconds, nothing happens. Then the sky above the target truck erupts. 36 shells impact within a 2-second window. The truck doesn't just explode, it vaporizes. The ground craters. Smoke and debris mushroom upward. The gun crews stand in stunned silence. They've just witnessed something impossible. Perfect synchronization without communication between batteries. Then, someone starts cheering. Within seconds, all 108 men are shouting, embracing, dancing. McNamara is grinning like a madman. Tuttle stands apart, quietly checking his calculations, making notes for refinement. A jeep roars up. Colonel Harold Bull, the Fort Sill Range safety officer, jumps out, face purple with rage. Who authorized this exercise? That is illegal. Unauthorized live fire is a court-martial offense. McNamara steps forward. My responsibility, sir, but you need to see what we just did. I don't care what you did. You violated. We synchronized 36 guns without radio communication. McNamara interrupts. Perfect time on target. The Germans can't do that. We just changed artillery warfare. Bull stares at the smoking crater downrange. His anger evaporates. Show me exactly what you did. July 1944. Field Artillery School Headquarters. Tuttle stands before 15 artillery officers in the school's main conference room. They represent the Army's artillery establishment. West Point graduates, combat veterans, men who've studied artillery doctrine for decades. Their collective experience totals over 200 years. Tuttle is 34 years old and has never heard a shot fired in anger. He explains his time-on-target system, the mathematics, the test results, the potential battlefield applications. He speaks for 20 minutes, using a chalkboard to illustrate the differential equations that make synchronized fire possible. When he finishes, the room erupts. This is theoretical nonsense. Colonel James Hartley, the school's chief instructor, slams his palm on the table. You can't reduce artillery to mathematics. It's an art, not a science. The calculations assume perfect conditions, Major Robert Stevenson adds. In combat, you have smoke, confusion, radio failures. Your system falls apart. We've tried coordination before, another officer argues. It doesn't work in the field. Men get killed trying to be clever instead of just firing their guns. Bull, The range safety officer stands. Gentlemen, I witnessed the test. 36 guns, perfect synchronization. The mathematics work. One test under controlled conditions proves nothing. Hartley fires back. This isn't a classroom. This is war. We need artillery officers who can fight, not mathematicians who can calculate. The debate rages for an hour. The artillery establishment sees Tuttle's system as a threat to everything they've built their careers on. If a math professor can revolutionize artillery with equations, what does that say about their decades of experience? Tuttle sits quietly, letting them argue. He's learned that sometimes the best response to emotion is patience. Finally, a door opens. Major General Robert Eichelberger, Commandant of the Field Artillery School, enters. The room falls silent. Eichelberger is a legend, a veteran of World War I, where he witnessed German artillery devastate American positions at the Meuse-Argonne. I've read Lieutenant Colonel Tuttle's report, Eichelberger says. I've reviewed the test data. I've also read casualty reports from Normandy. Our boys are dying because German artillery is faster and more coordinated than ours. He looks directly at Hartley. Your objections are noted, Colonel, but we're going to implement this system immediately. Hartley's face reddens. General, with respect, we're talking about fundamentally changing artillery doctrine based on one test by a mathematics professor. We're talking about saving American lives. Eichelberger cuts him off. Tuttle, you have 6 weeks to train a cadre of instructors. They'll deploy to Europe and train every artillery battalion in theater. This becomes standard doctrine as of August 15th. Before we continue with how this mathematical breakthrough changed the war, I want to tell you about something that changed how I create these videos. This channel exists because of viewers like you who want to understand the real stories behind military history. If you're enjoying this deep dive into how one man's mathematics saved thousands of lives, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're building a community of people who believe history's most important lessons come from understanding the details, not just the headlines. Now, let's see what happened when Tuttle's mathematics hit the battlefield. September 1944, near Aachen, Germany. The first combat test of time on target comes on September 12, 1944. Lieutenant Colonel John Hines commands the 258th Field Artillery Battalion, supporting the 1st Infantry Division's assault on Aachen. His battalion has just completed Tuttle's training. Hines receives a fire mission. German infantry is massing for a counterattack in a tree line, coordinates provided by forward observers. In the old system, his 3 batteries would fire independently over several minutes. The Germans would scatter after the first impacts. Instead, Hines implements time on target. He radios all 3 batteries simultaneously with target coordinates and impact time, 1435 hours. Each battery commander calculates his firing time using Tuttle's tables. Battery A, fire at 1434.51. Battery B, fire at 1434.54. Battery C, fire at 1434.56. At 1434.51, the guns begin firing in sequence. 9 seconds separate first shot from last. At precisely 14:35 or 36 shells impact the tree line simultaneously. The German infantry has no warning, no time to scatter. Forward observers report complete devastation of the target area. Estimated enemy casualties, over 200. American casualties in the subsequent assault, 12 wounded, 0 killed. Hines radios back to division headquarters. Time on target works. Request permission to train all division artillery. Within 2 weeks, every artillery battalion in 1st Army has adopted the system. The results are immediate and measurable. October 1944. Artillery effectiveness ratings jump from 18% to 41%. Enemy casualty rates from artillery increase by 137%. But more importantly, American infantry casualties during assaults decrease by 28%. Men are surviving because artillery is doing its job better. German commanders notice. Oberst, Colonel Hans von Luck, commanding the 125th Panzergrenadier Regiment, writes in his diary, "The American artillery has changed. They fire in massive synchronized salvos that appear without warning. Our troops cannot maneuver under such fire. It is like being under a steel blanket that falls from the sky all at once." December 16th, 1944. The Battle of the Bulge begins. This is where time on target proves its full potential. Major General Troy Middleton, commanding 8th Corps, has 9 artillery battalions under his command. As German forces punch through his lines, he implements something unprecedented, a Corps-level time-on-target mission. On December 18th, with American forces in Bastogne surrounded, Middleton coordinates all 9 battalions, over 300 guns, for a single massive strike against German assembly areas east of the town. The calculations are complex. Battalions are spread across 40 miles, at different elevations, with different ammunition stocks, but Tuttle's mathematics account for all of it. Each battalion calculates its firing time independently, working backward from the same impact time, 0800 hours. At 7:57, the guns begin firing. For 3 minutes, 300 artillery pieces fire in carefully calculated sequence. Then, at precisely 0800, the mathematics converge. Forward observers in Bastogne report the impact. The German assembly area erupts in what appears to be a single, massive explosion. In reality, it's over 1,000 shells impacting within a 15-second window. The German 26th Volksgrenadier Division, preparing to assault Bastogne, loses over 800 men in those 15 seconds. Their attack is cancelled. General Heinrich von Luttwitz, commanding the German XL 7th Panzer Corps, later writes, "We had faced American artillery throughout the campaign. But this was different. This was not artillery fire. This was mathematical annihilation. Our troops could not endure it." The numbers from the Battle of the Bulge tell the story. In the first week, before time on target was widely implemented, American artillery fired 1.2 million shells and achieved 18% effectiveness. In the second week, with time on target standard practice, American artillery fired 1.4 million shells and achieved 39% effectiveness. Same guns, same crews, different mathematics. January 1945. As Allied forces push into Germany, time on target evolves. Artillery officers begin coordinating not just battalions, but entire corps, over 500 guns firing in perfect synchronization. The Germans call these strikes Feuerzauber, fire magic. On January 15th, during the assault on the Roer River dams, Major General J. Lawton Collins coordinates 14 artillery battalions, over 450 guns, for a time-on-target strike against German defensive positions. The strike lasts 90 seconds. Forward observers report that German defenders simply stopped fighting. They emerged from their bunkers with hands raised, psychologically broken by the mathematical precision of the bombardment. German prisoner interrogations from this period reveal a consistent pattern. Soldiers report that American artillery had become unnatural and impossible to survive. One German sergeant, captured near Cologne, tells his interrogators, "We could endure artillery. We are soldiers. But this was not artillery. This was the sky falling in perfect rhythm. It breaks the mind." The mathematical impact is clear. From January through May 1945, American artillery using time on target achieves 43% effectiveness, nearly triple the pre-Tuttle rate. Enemy casualties from artillery increase by 164%. American infantry casualties decrease by 31% during assaults supported by time on target. But perhaps the most significant statistic comes from casualty analysis. Medical Corps studies estimate that time on target's improved artillery effectiveness saved approximately 18,000 American lives during the final 6 months of the European War. 18,000 men who came home because a mathematics professor understood differential equations. Before we conclude with what happened to Tuttle and how his innovation still saves lives today, I want to thank our Patreon supporters who make this detailed research possible. Creating documentaries like this requires hundreds of hours of research, accessing military archives, and consulting with historians. If you want to help us tell more stories like this, check out the link in the description. Your support means we can keep diving deep into the real stories behind military history. Now, let's see what happened after the war. May 8, 1945. Germany surrenders. William Tuttle receives the Legion of Merit for his development of time on target. The citation credits him with revolutionary advancement in artillery doctrine that significantly contributed to Allied victory. He attends the award ceremony, accepts the medal, shakes hands with General Eichelberger, and immediately requests return to civilian life. He doesn't give interviews. He doesn't write a memoir. He returns to the University of Oklahoma and resumes teaching mathematics. When students ask about his war service, he deflects. I did some calculations for the Army. Nothing special. But the men who fought under his mathematics remember. In 1947, veterans of the 1st Infantry Division raise money to commission a plaque at Fort Sill honoring Tuttle's contribution. The dedication ceremony draws over 200 veterans. Tuttle reluctantly attends. A veteran named James Mitchell, who fought at Bastogne, approaches him. Mitchell lost his left leg to German artillery on December 17, 1944. The next day, American time on target strikes broke the German assault. My son was born in 1946, Mitchell tells Tuttle. I named him William. Because of you, I came home to see him born. Because of you, my wife isn't a widow. Because of your mathematics, I have a life. Tuttle, uncomfortable with emotion, simply nods. But witnesses report tears in his eyes. The numbers tell Tuttle's legacy. By the end of World War II, time on target had become standard doctrine for American artillery. The system was used in over 12,000 fire missions. Artillery effectiveness improved from 18% to 43%. Estimated enemy casualties from American artillery, over 150,000. Estimated American lives saved, approximately 18,000. But the legacy extends far beyond World War II. Time on target became the foundation for modern artillery coordination. During the Korean War, American artillery used enhanced time on target systems to devastating effect. At the Battle of the Soyang River in May 1951, coordinated time on target strikes from over 300 guns stopped a Chinese offensive that outnumbered American forces 5-1. In Vietnam, computerized fire direction centers automated Tuttle's calculations, enabling even larger coordinated strikes. During Operation Pegasus in 1968, over 400 guns fired synchronized time-on-target missions to relieve the siege of Khe Sanh. The Gulf War in 1991 saw time on target reach its technological apex. GPS-guided artillery and computerized fire control systems could coordinate over 800 guns across hundreds of miles. But the mathematics remained Tuttle's. Calculate impact time, work backwards to firing time, synchronize without direct communication between batteries. Today, the U.S. Army's multiple launch rocket system and the M109 Paladin howitzer both use fire control computers that automate time-on-target calculations. But the underlying mathematical principles are identical to what Tuttle scribbled on paper in 1944. Every artillery officer in the U.S. Army learns time on target during basic training. They don't always know they're learning Tuttle's mathematics, but they are. William Tuttle died in 1983 at age 73. His obituary in the Oklahoma City Times was 4 paragraphs long. It mentioned that he taught mathematics at the University of Oklahoma for 38 years. It noted that he served in World War II. It did not mention time on target. But at Fort Sill, in the Field Artillery Museum, there's a small exhibit about time on target. It includes Tuttle's original handwritten calculation tables, yellowed and fragile. It includes photographs from the first test in June 1944. And it includes a quote from General Eichelberger. Lieutenant Colonel Tuttle proved that in war, as in all things, mathematics doesn't lie. He saved thousands of lives with nothing but equations and courage. The lesson of William Tuttle isn't about artillery. It's about the power of looking at old problems with new eyes. The artillery establishment had declared synchronized fire impossible. They had decades of experience, prestigious credentials, institutional authority. They were wrong. Tuttle had none of those things. He had curiosity, persistence, and a willingness to treat a military problem as a mathematical one. He proved that sometimes the greatest innovations come not from experts defending their expertise, but from outsiders asking a simple question: what if we tried it differently? In December 1944, German generals laughed at American artillery. They had reason to. American guns fired independently, ineffectively, predictably. Then they saw 500 guns fire in perfect synchronization. They saw their assembly areas vaporized in 15 seconds. They saw their troops broken not by superior firepower, but by superior mathematics. They stopped laughing, and 18,000 American soldiers came home because a quiet mathematics professor understood that war, like everything else, follows the rules of calculus. You just have to know how to calculate.